For months, the palace has maintained a facade of impenetrable calm. We were told the surgery was planned. We were told the recovery was progressing. We were told that the Princess of Wales simply needed time. But tonight, those assurances have dissolved into dust. In a shocking development that has stunned the inner circle of the monarchy, Prince William, the man raised to be the stoic face of the British crown, has collapsed under the weight of a devastating truth. This wasn't a stumble. This wasn't a moment of fatigue. This was the total physical disintegration of a future king. Witnesses inside Adelaide Cottage describe a scene of utter heartbreak. A single, classified document, hand-delivered under the highest security clearance, shattered the silence of the royal household. And the moment William read the final line of that leaked medical report, the walls he had built to protect his family and himself came crashing down. To understand why William broke, we must first understand what the palace has been hiding. For weeks, whispers have circulated through the dark corridors of Westminster and the private clubs of Mayfair. Rumors that the official narrative regarding Kate's abdominal surgery was merely a placeholder, a sanitized version of a much darker reality. But rumors are one thing, documentation is another. The report in question was never meant to see the light of day. It was an internal critical care assessment, a raw, unfiltered analysis of the princess's post-operative trajectory intended only for the King and the Prince of Wales. But in an era where loyalty is scarce, someone leaked it, and what it contains contradicts every single press release Kensington Palace has issued since January. It doesn't speak of routine recovery. It speaks of unforeseen complications. It speaks of a timeline that isn't measured in weeks, but in survival. When the dossier hit William's desk, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Aides described a sudden, chilling drop in temperature. The prince, usually so composed, so fiercely protective of his privacy, didn't just read a status update. He read a verdict. For the first time in his life, the training didn't hold. The mantra of "never complain, never explain" offered no shelter against the words staring back at him from that page. According to a source close to the household, William let out a sound that didn't sound human. It was the sound of a husband realizing that the power of the crown, the power to command armies, to sign laws, to shape history, was completely useless against the biological reality facing his wife. He collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands, shaking uncontrollably. This is the image the palace is terrified you will see. Not the poised statesman shaking hands at a gala, but a broken man, stripped of his titles, faced with the terrifying fragility of the woman who has been his anchor for 20 years. The leaked report didn't just expose Kate's condition. It exposed the vulnerability of the entire institution. Because, without Kate, the future of the monarchy looks very different. And in that moment of collapse, William wasn't grieving a princess. He was grieving the life they were supposed to have. Why now? Why did this report leak at this specific moment? The timing is suspicious, almost cruel. Just as the public began to accept the Easter return narrative, this bombshell dropped. It forces us to ask, was the palace lying to protect Kate, or were they lying to protect themselves? The discrepancy between "she is doing well" and the medical data in this report is not just a gap, it is a canyon. William knows this. He knows that the moment this information becomes public knowledge, the trust between the crown and the people will be severed. But in that room, surrounded by terrified staff and the ghost of a future that is slipping away, politics were the last thing on his mind. His collapse was the physical manifestation of a burden he has been carrying in secret for weeks. The smiling photos, the vague updates, the empty reassurances, it was all a performance. And tonight, the curtain fell. The report details a specific post-operative crisis that occurred just days ago, a crisis that the palace has desperately tried to keep off the record. But secrets have a way of festering in the dark. As William sat there, broken and weeping, he wasn't just reacting to news, he was reacting to the shattering of a promise. The promise that everything was going to be fine. The reality, as we are about to explore, is far more complex and far more dangerous than anyone dared to imagine. The document that caused the future king to collapse is not a long report. It is concise, brutal, and terrifyingly specific. Titled Critical Care Assessment, EI, Patient Alpha. It strips away the polished veneer of Kensington Palace PR and presents a biological reality that no amount of spin can hide. What William held in his hands wasn't just a medical update, it was the anatomy of a lie that has been fed to the British public for months. The first shock comes from the timeline. The palace officially stated that the princess underwent planned abdominal surgery in January. Yet, the leaked file references a pre-operative emergency intervention dated back in late December. This single detail changes everything. It suggests that the planned narrative was a fabrication designed to mask a sudden, life-threatening crisis that occurred weeks before the public was told anything. But the timeline is the least of the revelations. The section that likely broke Prince William is labeled Intra-Operative Complications. While the world was told the surgery was successful, the report details a harrowing sequence of events in the operating theater. It mentions significant blood loss and the immediate mobilization of a specialized resuscitation team. For a terrifying window of time, the Princess of Wales wasn't just in surgery, she was fighting to stay alive. This explains the silence. This explains the cancelled engagements. And most heartbreakingly, this explains the look in William's eyes. Over the past few weeks, a look of haunted exhaustion that we all mistook for simple stress. He wasn't just worried about recovery, he was traumatized by the near loss of his wife. The report confirms that the situation was so critical, the children were kept away not to protect their privacy, but to protect them from seeing their mother hooked up to life support machinery. The document goes further, outlining the post-operative trajectory. This is where the hope of an Easter return is completely dismantled. The medical language used here is grim. It speaks of a fragile stabilization and warns of the high risk of secondary infection. The phrase that stands out, typed in bold, is indeterminate recovery period. In medical terms, this is a polite way of saying the doctors do not know when or if she will fully return to her former capacity. William's collapse wasn't just about the past trauma of the surgery, it was about the future. The report makes it clear that the Kate Middleton, the world, knew the tireless, radiant Duchess who could shake hands for hours and travel the globe may not be coming back. Her body has endured a trauma that requires a complete restructuring of her life. The report suggests a future of managed visibility, meaning her role as a working royal is effectively suspended indefinitely. This is the secret the palace is desperate to contain. They aren't just hiding an illness, they are hiding the fact that the monarchy's greatest asset has been taken off the board. The lie about the planned surgery was a desperate attempt to buy time, to figure out how to sell a reduced monarchy to a skeptical public. But as William stared at those pages, the weight of the deception crushed him. He knows that when this truth comes out, the public will feel betrayed. But there is one final section of the report, a handwritten note in the margins, likely from the chief surgeon. It contains just 3 words, but they are the most dangerous words in the entire file. 3 words that hint at the root cause of the entire ordeal, contradicting everything we've been led to believe. And it is these 3 words that have turned William's grief into a cold, hard rage against the institution he was born to lead. At the bottom of the leaked critical care assessment, scrawled in black ink by the lead surgeon, are 3 words that have effectively rewritten the future of the House of Windsor. They are not medical jargon that requires a dictionary to decipher. They are blunt, final, and terrifying. The note reads, Systemic Oncology Protocol. For William, reading these words was the moment the ground beneath him ceased to exist. Systemic Oncology Protocol is not a phrase used for preventative measures. It is not used for routine checks. It is the clinical designation for an aggressive, full-body battle against cancer that has already moved beyond a localized threat. This handwritten addendum shatters the palace's initial statement in January that the princess's condition was non-cancerous. That statement, we now realize, was a calculated deception, a lie designed to keep the markets calm and the public distracted, while the royal family scrambled to deal with a catastrophe behind closed doors. The report indicates that the medical team knew the true nature of the condition the moment they operated. Yet, for weeks, William was forced to play the part of the reassured husband, smiling for cameras while carrying the knowledge that his wife was facing a fight for her life. The leaked file details the specific diagnosis that necessitated this protocol. It references a high-grade abdominal malignancy requiring immediate and intensive intervention. This explains the physical transformation of the Prince of Wales. The weight loss, the clenched jaw, the sudden cancellations of appearances. It wasn't just stress. It was the crushing reality of watching his wife endure a treatment plan that is notoriously grueling. But the true tragedy lies in the isolation. The report reveals that due to the security implications of the diagnosis, Kate has been cut off from her usual support network. The palace machinery, in its obsession with secrecy, has effectively quarantined her, not just from the public, but from the normalcy she desperately needs. William's collapse was fueled by a deep, burning guilt. He is a man with immense power, yet he is powerless to stop the firm from treating his wife's illness as a state secret rather than a human tragedy. The diagnosis also forces a terrifying conversation about succession. If the princess is incapacitated for a prolonged period, the burden on William doubles. He is no longer just the heir. He is a single parent to the future king, navigating a constitutional crisis alone. The systemic oncology protocol means that the Princess of Wales is not just recovering, she is at war. And as William stared at those words, he realized that the enemy isn't just the disease, it is the silence he has been forced to maintain. This revelation recontextualizes every rumor, every blurry photo, and every strange statement from the last 2 months. The Mother's Day photo fiasco wasn't a simple editing mistake. It was a desperate attempt to project vitality where there was none. The palace is terrified because they know what this diagnosis means for the stability of the crown. A king needs a queen, and right now, the future queen is fighting a battle that no press release can spin. As the shock of the handwritten note subsided, a new emotion took hold of Prince William. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was a cold, hard realization that the institution he serves cares more about the image of survival than the survival itself. And in that moment of clarity, amidst the tears and the shaking, a decision began to form in his mind. A decision that would pit him directly against his father, the king, and the grey suits who controlled the palace narrative. The collapse at Adelaide Cottage was the breaking point, but what happened next was the explosion. Less than an hour after reading the leaked report, Prince William did something that royal protocol strictly forbids. He drove himself to Clarence House, bypassing his security detail's standard formation, and demanded an immediate audience with the king. This was not a meeting between a father and son. This was a confrontation between the reigning monarch and the man who no longer believes in the way the monarchy is being run. Inside the king's private study, the air was reportedly glacial. Sources describe the shouting match that ensued as tectonic. For decades, William has towed the line, respecting the hierarchy and the never-explained mantra of the old guard. But the systemic oncology protocol changed the rules of engagement. William accused the king and his senior advisors of prioritizing the image of stability over the actual life of his wife. He reportedly slammed the leaked medical file onto the antique desk and asked a single, devastating question. Are we a family, or are we just a corporation? Charles, for his part, stood his ground. He represents the old way, the belief that the crown's mystique depends on its distance from the public. To Charles, admitting the full severity of Kate's condition is tantamount to admitting weakness. He argued that total transparency would cause panic, destabilize the Commonwealth, and feed the media vultures. He invoked the late Queen's stoicism, reminding William that duty often requires the suppression of personal pain. But William is not Charles, and he is certainly not the Queen. He is Diana's son, and in that room, the ghost of the late princess was palpable. William reportedly told his father that he refuses to let history repeat itself. He refuses to let his wife be isolated, silenced, and paraded as a prop while she is fighting a life-threatening disease. He threw the Mother's Day photo scandal back in the king's face, citing it as proof that the palace's obsession with secrecy has become incompetent and dangerous. The argument escalated to an ultimatum. Insiders claim that William threatened to step back entirely from public duties, not just for a few weeks, but indefinitely, if the palace did not change its strategy. He demanded that the lying stop. He demanded that they release a truthful, dignified statement, acknowledging the severity of the situation, rather than insulting the public's intelligence with vague updates about planned surgeries. This is a constitutional crisis in the making. If the Prince of Wales goes on strike, the monarchy effectively ceases to function. Charles knows this. He stared at his son and saw not a subordinate, but a man pushed to the edge. The king is frail, battling his own health issues, and he relies on William and Kate to be the face of the future. Without them, the House of Windsor is an empty shell. The meeting ended without a handshake. William stormed out, leaving the king alone with the terrifying realization that he is losing control of his heir. The firm is fracturing. The leaked report didn't just expose Kate's illness, it exposed the deep, unhealed wounds between the father and the son. And as William drove back into the night, he knew that he had just declared war on the very system he was born to protect. If Prince William thought his ultimatum would force the palace to change course, he underestimated the ruthlessness of the machine he was born into. The confrontation at Clarence House did not result in a surrender from the king's advisors. Instead, it triggered a counteroffensive so calculated and cold-blooded that it reminds us why the monarchy has survived for 1,000 years. It destroys anyone who threatens its stability, even if that person is the heir to the throne. Less than 12 hours after William stormed out of his father's study, the narrative in the press began to shift. This was not an accident. It was a coordinated hit job, orchestrated by the gray suits, the unseen courtiers who truly run the palace. Suddenly, anonymously sourced articles began appearing in the tabloids, painting a very different picture of the Prince of Wales. They didn't describe a grieving husband fighting for his wife. They described a man who is volatile, prone to fits of rage, and buckling under the pressure. This is the classic palace playbook. When you cannot control the message, you destroy the messenger. The firm is terrified that William's refusal to play the game will expose the lie about Kate's condition. So, they have decided to discredit him. By framing William as emotionally unstable, they inoculate themselves against anything he might say or do in the future. If he steps back from duties, they can now say it is because he is weak, not because they are lying. But the smear campaign didn't stop at character assassination. It went darker. In a move that many insiders believe bears the fingerprints of Queen Camilla's seasoned PR team, old, unfounded rumors began to resurface on social media and in the fringe press. The Rose Hanbury whispers, which had been dormant for years, were suddenly breathed back to life. This is a tactic known as Operation Distraction. By flooding the zone with salacious gossip about William's marriage, the palace successfully diverts the public's attention away from the real question. Where is Kate, and why did they lie about her cancer? It is a Machiavellian strategy. They are willing to sacrifice William's reputation to protect the king's secret. William, back at Adelaide Cottage, watched in horror as the media cycle turned against him. He realized that his father's court isn't just refusing to help. They are actively declaring war on him. He is isolated, with a sick wife and 3 children, fighting a multi-front battle against a disease and against his own family. The most chilling aspect of this counterattack is its efficiency. The leaks are precise. The tone is dismissive. The message to William is clear. Get back in line, or we will destroy you. The systemic oncology protocol is no longer just a medical document. It has become a political weapon. The palace is betting that William will break, that he will return to the fold to stop the negative press. But they have miscalculated one thing: William's desperation. He is no longer playing by the rules of the Windsors. As the smear campaign intensified, William reportedly made a secret phone call, not to a lawyer and not to a royal aide. He called the one person who knows exactly how the palace destroys its own. The one person who has been waiting in exile for a moment just like this. The alliance that is about to form will shake the monarchy to its core. The phone call took place at 3 in the morning. London time. Prince William, sitting alone in the darkness of his study at Adelaide Cottage, did what he once swore he would never do. He reached for an encrypted line and dialed a California area code. On the other end, thousands of miles away, Prince Harry answered. This was not a call for reconciliation, nor was it a casual family chat. It was a tactical transmission between two men who have both been victimized by the same invisible machinery of the palace. The conversation began in silence, a heavy recognition of the years of public warfare between them. But as William described the contents of the systemic oncology protocol and the subsequent smear campaign launched against him by his own father's court, the rift between the brothers vanished, replaced by a shared, ancestral rage. For the first time since their mother's funeral, they were unified by a common enemy, the firm. Harry's reaction was immediate and visceral. He has spent the last 4 years warning William that the palace would eventually turn on him, that the institution values the crown more than the individuals who wear it. Now, seeing his brother's world collapsing and Kate's life being treated as a PR liability, Harry offered more than just sympathy. He offered a weapon. He reminded William that he still possesses the one thing the palace cannot control, a global platform, and the truth about how the royal machine operates in the shadows. This is the palace's worst nightmare realized. They have spent years playing the brothers against each other, using the spare to protect the heir. But by attacking William, the grey suits have inadvertently forced the two most powerful figures of the new generation into a corner. William, the man of duty, and Harry, the man of exile, are now sharing intelligence. Harry reportedly provided William with a list of names, the specific operatives within the palace PR team who specialize in character assassination, the same people who once targeted Meghan. The alliance is strictly strategic. William is not looking for a return to the old days, and Harry is not looking for an apology. They are focused on survival. William needs a way to bypass the palace's censorship and tell the truth about Kate's condition before the systemic oncology protocol becomes a death sentence for her reputation. Harry, with his connections to American media and his lack of institutional restraint, is the only person who can help him do that. As the call ended, a plan was set in motion. It is a high-stakes gamble that could result in the total dismantling of the royal family's relationship with the press. William is no longer just fighting for his wife. He is fighting for the very soul of his future reign. He realized that to save Kate from being erased by the palace machine, he must be willing to burn the house down. And Harry is more than happy to provide the match. Back at Buckingham Palace, the king's advisors remain oblivious to the digital bridge that has just been built across the Atlantic. They believe they have William contained. They believe the smear campaign is working. They don't realize that the future king and the outcast prince are now operating as a single unit. The stage is set for a betrayal that will make the events of the last decade look like a minor disagreement. The brothers are back together, and they are coming for the truth. The alliance between the brothers has introduced a new, volatile element into the crisis, a search for the source. William, now armed with the tactical insights provided by Harry, has realized that the leaked report, the systemic oncology protocol, is not just a document, it is a crime scene. To regain control of the narrative, William knew he had to find the man who signed it. But when he attempted to contact the lead consultant mentioned in the file, he discovered a reality that felt more like a political thriller than royal life. The physician has vanished. The doctor, a highly decorated oncologist with decades of service to the crown, officially went on unannounced sabbatical the very day the report was leaked. His private office in Marylebone is closed. His digital footprint has been scrubbed. For William, this is the ultimate confirmation of a cover-up. In the world of the Windsors, people don't just disappear unless they have seen something that the institution cannot allow to be spoken. The vanishing of the doctor suggests that the leaked report was only the beginning, that there are biological truths about Kate's condition so sensitive that the palace is willing to erase a man's career to keep them hidden. However, Harry's exile intelligence provided a crucial breakthrough. He revealed to William that before he left the UK, he learned of a dead man's switch protocol used by certain high-level medical staff. Fearing the reach of the palace's non-disclosure agreements, Some physicians maintain off-site, encrypted backups of royal medical data as a form of personal life insurance. William and Harry are now engaged in a desperate race against the palace's internal security teams to locate this digital backup. If they find it, they won't just have a leaked report. They will have the raw data, the scans, and the truth that the systemic oncology protocol only hinted at. This search has led them to a startling realization about the diagnosis itself. The systemic nature of the protocol mentioned in Part 3 was always the sticking point. Why systemic? New whispers, coordinated through Harry's secure channels, suggest that the cancer was not the primary event, but a secondary complication resulting from a much rarer, much more controversial medical crisis. A crisis that the palace has spent millions of pounds trying to redefine as abdominal surgery. As the brothers dig deeper, the pressure from Buckingham Palace has reached a fever pitch. The smear campaign against William, detailed earlier, has now shifted toward legal threats. The king's lawyers have quietly reminded William that the civil list and his future titles are contingent on his capacity and loyalty. It is a blatant attempt to blackmail the heir into silence. But they have underestimated the psychological shift in William. He is no longer the dutiful son. He is a man who has looked at the vanished status of his wife's doctor and realized that if he doesn't fight now, Kate will be the next one to be vanished from the history books, rewritten as a tragic figure who simply faded away. The tension is no longer just about a medical report, it's about a total institutional breakdown. The palace grey suits are panicking because they can no longer find the leak, and they can no longer find the doctor. The machine is glitching. For the first time in modern history, the firm is losing its grip on a secret. And as William and Harry close in on the doctor's hidden files, they are about to discover that the true condition of the Princess of Wales is linked to a royal secret that dates back to the very beginning of William and Kate's marriage, a secret that changes the genetic legacy of the future king himself. The discovery of the physician's hidden files has shifted the crisis from a medical tragedy to a constitutional earthquake. As William and Harry's team decrypted the final layer of the dead man's switch data, they found a section of Kate's medical history that had been redacted even from the leaked report William read earlier. It wasn't just about the current diagnosis. It was about a predisposition analysis conducted years ago, shortly after the birth of Prince Louis. The documents suggest that the palace has known for years that the Princess of Wales carried a specific, high-risk genetic marker, a marker that not only explained her current health crisis, but also posed a direct question about the future of the royal bloodline. This is the secret that the king and his advisors were truly protecting. If the public, and more importantly, the Commonwealth realized that the future queen was facing a condition with deep genetic implications, the stability of the succession would be called into account. The report hints at a succession contingency plan drafted in secret by the grey suits. This plan didn't just discuss Kate's health, it discussed the viability of the children's future roles. It treated the heirs to the throne not as children, but as biological assets, whose market value might be diminished by the truth of their mother's condition. For William, this was the ultimate betrayal. He discovered that while he was grieving, and while Kate was fighting for her life, the institution was already calculating the logistics of a monarchy without her, and potentially a monarchy that might need to bypass his own bloodline. The files reveal that the palace had considered alternative succession narratives as far back as 2022. The cold, clinical nature of these documents stripped away any remaining loyalty William felt toward the royal machine. He realized that, to the firm, Kate was never a family member. She was a vessel for the future of the crown, and now that the vessel was compromised, they were ready to discard her. This revelation explains the systemic nature of the protocol. It wasn't just a battle against cancer. It was an attempt to manage a systemic genetic crisis that the palace had hoped to keep hidden until William's own coronation. By forcing Kate into silence and using the planned surgery cover story, they were trying to buy time to ensure that the children were old enough to be insulated from the fallout. But the leak has accelerated the timeline. The genetic secret is out, and it places a permanent shadow over the House of Windsor. The pressure on the king has now become unbearable. Charles is caught between his role as a father and his role as the protector of the institution's secrets. He knows that if William releases this data, the mystique of the royal blood is gone forever. It would expose the monarchy as a fragile, biological entity rather than a divinely ordained institution. But William is no longer listening to pleas for the good of the crown. He is looking at his children and seeing them through the lens of those cold palace memos, and his rage has reached a point of no return. The brothers are now preparing for the final phase of their operation. They have the medical data, they have the proof of the smear campaign, and now they have the evidence of the palace's cold-blooded succession planning. They are no longer just looking for an apology. They are looking for a total restructuring of how the monarchy operates. The shadow over the succession is not just a health issue anymore, it is a revolution from within. And the next move will be the most public and the most devastating of all. The discovery of the palace's secret succession contingencies was the final spark. William realized that the institution he was born to lead had already written his wife out of the script. The systemic oncology protocol was no longer just a medical treatment. It was the mechanism by which the palace intended to manage Kate's exit from the royal stage. Armed with the decrypted data and supported by the tactical alliance with Harry, William decided to commit what the courtiers call the ultimate betrayal. He bypassed the palace press office entirely and prepared a personal declaration that would strip away the lies of the last several months. Inside the private quarters of Adelaide Cottage, William sat before a simple camera setup. No royal crests, no gilded backdrops, and no scripted teleprompter from the king's advisors. This was a move of pure desperation and raw honesty. He recorded a message that detailed the reality of Kate's fight, the genetic complexities the palace tried to hide, and the psychological warfare he had endured at the hands of his own father's court. He spoke not as the Prince of Wales, but as a husband whose loyalty to his wife had finally overridden his loyalty to the crown. This declaration was his way of burning the bridges behind him, ensuring that the palace could never return to the planned surgery narrative. The news of the recording sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace. The king's senior advisors, upon learning that William was planning to release a statement through an independent global news network, assisted by Harry's American connections, realized they had lost their leverage. The smear campaign had failed. The legal threats had failed. By choosing truth over protocol, William had effectively dismantled the never-explained doctrine. The palace was forced into a state of total paralysis. They couldn't arrest him, they couldn't silence him, and they couldn't discredit him without destroying the future of the monarchy itself. William's declaration included a direct message to the public. The crown is a symbol, but my family is a reality. We have been asked to prioritize the symbol over the human lives that sustain it. I will do so no longer. These words were a direct shot at King Charles and the centuries of tradition that have defined the Windsors. It was an admission that the system is broken, and that the secrecy surrounding Kate's true condition was a symptom of a deeper rot within the institution. He exposed the fact that the palace knew about the diagnosis since late December and spent millions of pounds on a deception campaign to protect the mystique of the bloodline. This is the point of no return. By making this declaration, William has alienated the old guard, including his father and Queen Camilla. He has chosen a path that leads away from the traditional, shrouded monarchy and towards something far more vulnerable and transparent. The systemic oncology protocol is finally being seen for what it is, a medical crisis that was exacerbated by an institutional lie. The public's reaction to this honesty is expected to be a tidal wave of sympathy for Kate and William, and a devastating loss of trust in the king and the gray suits who orchestrated the cover-up. But the declaration was more than just a revelation of illness. It was a manifesto for a new kind of kingship. William pledged that under his reign, the palace would never again treat the health of its members as a matter of state security to be manipulated. He effectively declared a new deal for the monarchy, one rooted in the human reality that Diana had always championed. As the video file was uploaded to the encrypted servers of the world's major news outlets, the shadow over the crown began to shift. The truth was out, and the House of Windsor would never, ever be the same again. The release of William's personal declaration has not just caused a scandal, it has triggered a constitutional reset. The British monarchy, an institution that has survived for 1,000 years by hiding behind a veil of mystique and silence, was forced to confront the one thing it feared most: the unvarnished truth. As the dust settles on the revelation of the systemic oncology protocol and the genetic secrets the palace tried to bury, we are left with a House of Windsor that is forever altered. The reckoning has arrived, and its impact is being felt from the private studies of Buckingham Palace to the farthest reaches of the Commonwealth. The primary victim of this reckoning was the grey suits, the anonymous, powerful advisors who for decades have manipulated royal narratives. William's move effectively decapitated the old guard's influence. Senior courtiers, some of whom had served the late Queen for 40 years, have quietly tendered their resignations. They realized that the never-explained era ended the moment the heir to the throne uploaded his own truth to the world. King Charles, facing a public whose trust has been severely tested, was forced to issue a historic statement of his own, not a denial, but an admission of lessons learned. He acknowledged that, in the attempt to protect the dignity of the crown, the human needs of its members had been neglected. This was the first time a reigning monarch had ever apologized for the institution's own secrecy. But what of Kate? The true condition that was exposed, the genetic fight, and the systemic malignancy, is no longer a source of shame or state security. By bringing it into the light, William has transformed Kate from a victim of palace secrecy into a global symbol of courage. The isolation that was killing her spirit was broken by the tidal wave of public support. The latest medical updates, now delivered with a newfound transparency, suggest that the indeterminate recovery period is being met with a level of care that is no longer compromised by the need to maintain a lie. Kate is finally being treated as a human being, not as a biological asset of the state. The alliance between William and Harry, born in the darkness of a late-night phone call, has also created a new blueprint for the future. While Harry remains in California, the bridge between the brothers is now a permanent fixture. They have proven that when the heirs unite against the machine breaks. This has led to the drafting of a royal charter of transparency, a set of internal laws that will govern how health and personal crises are handled in the future. It is a legacy of the Kate crisis, a guarantee that no future princess or queen will ever be vanished or silenced by the firm again. As we look toward the future, the House of Windsor stands at a crossroads. The mystique is gone, replaced by a raw, modern vulnerability. Some traditionalists argue that William has destroyed the monarchy's magic, but others believe he has saved it. By choosing his wife over the protocol and truth over the lie, William has reset the monarchy for the 21st century. He has shown that a king's greatest strength is not his distance from the people, but his shared humanity with them. The story of the leaked report and the collapse of a future king will be remembered as the moment the palace dropped the mask. It was a brutal, painful, and terrifying ordeal that nearly cost William his marriage and Kate her dignity. But in the end, the systemic oncology protocol didn't just expose a disease, it exposed a system that needed to change. The reckoning is complete. The future of the House of Windsor is no longer written in secret memos by anonymous men. It is being written in the light, by a man who refused to let the crown crush the woman he loves. The era of silence is over. The era of the human king has begun.